Smells. Hey,
Yes, up here. I just setting up there.
okay. I don't know what's going on. It's like what's going on? Something is wrong, man.
What's that?
I it's like it's like I'm not the host. Like I can't mute it. Like, I tried to mute. I can't mute you. Oh, what are you doing? I don't get it.
You get me? Okay.
Mute,
But
mute,
why?
mute your mic. Mute your mic because mute your mic.
Oh, that's all. That's not, sorry. That's not. Let me go to thing. Doc-
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, me and you? Yes.
Okay. Not
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
All right. All
All
right.
right.
You can mute.
Okay. Okay. Let me get that thing.
But she's serious. you to see us out there. La 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 la, la la la, la 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la, la la la, la 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 la, la 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 la. He will be white. He will be. La 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 yeah. Come la 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 yeah. Come la 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 la. Happy, happy somebody. Cause I just died in the sea. Yeah. Cause when you tell someone will help you to be down, when you down, whoa, when you down, so what to when you around. But let us sing a happy, happy song. Cause I did die in the sea. Yeah. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. You gon' dance so nice, you're not moving. You gon' move. Like you want to group, just get on the dance theater, a dance floor, and move your body for sure. I said jump, spread out. Like you want to group, just get on the dance theater, a dance floor, and move your body for sure. I said like you want to group, just get on the dance theater, a dance floor, and move your body.
Stein, can you hear me? Mr. Mills, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you hearing me good?
Loud and clear.
Okay.
Morrison, can you hear me? Mr. Morrison Thomas, can you hear me? Stein, I see you are on. Your mic is on mute.
Yes, Donnie, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you loud and clear, my friend.
All
Yes.
right, I'm here.
Okay, we're waiting for Stein. Stein, if you can hear me, your mic is on mute. So you need to unmute your mic. We're waiting for Stein.
Who's on the book? Why?
Gentlemen, unmute your mics. Okay, Mr. Mills, unmute your mic. We're going to start. Mr. Mills, unmute your mic.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Morrison,
Yes, sir.
ready?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm ready.
All right. Good evening. Good evening to everyone listening to us in Dominica and across the globe. My name is Donovan Fabian, and I'm your host tonight of another Touching Base program, which comes to you every Monday night from 8 p.m. and usually go till 10. Sometimes we go a little more. Let me thank you very much for being with us again. Let me welcome my panelists, my loyal comrades, Mr. Cleville Mills and Mr. Morrison Thomas. And tonight we have a special guest who will join us shortly, Mr. Steinberg Henry. Let me say, first of all, thank you to the Man's Audiovisual, which are the Mann brothers, Derek and David, for the technical expertise. Well, thank you. And helping us to make this program, a success every week. At this time, I see our special guest is trying to make contact with us. A success every week. So welcome again to Touching Base. And let me have Mr. Mills and Mr. Morrison say good night to the people.
Okay, good evening to all of our viewers and listeners to Touching Base as usual every Monday night. Those of you who are following on YouTube, on Facebook, and on VTM Radio. VTJM Radio. Good evening to you all.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can understand.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay,
Right.
excellent.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. And
Thank
good evening to our special guest, Steinberg Henry.
And can you see me clearly also?
No, we can't see you yet.
So,
You have to,
your video seems to be off.
you have to
My video is
turn
still
your video
on.
on.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Is that
Right.
is it in order? Is it correct on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. You probably could be centered a little bit if you move to your right.
What about this? No?
Yes,
A little more.
a little more. A little more. A little more.
Right.
A little more. Okay, that's awesome.
I'll bring up a camera over your head.
There you go.
Okay.
Perfect. It's time.
Right.
Still looking young.
Okay. Special good evening to Steinberg.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So I'm looking forward for a very great show this evening, and I'm very happy to have you on board with us. So we'll see as the evening goes on.
Okay, Morrison.
Good evening to all Touching Base fans. Once again, we're here at our round table to discuss pertinent events about Dominica, about the current state of affairs in Dominica. I knew last week that we had a bumper crop of viewership, and we thank our loyal audience for always tuning in. We ask you guys to always like and share our product so that we can get more viewership. Also, a shout out to the Mann Brothers for their production and assisting us in disseminating our information. Also, to a special guest this evening, Dr. Steinberg Henry. We can't wait to dialogue with you this evening, and which should be in a couple of minutes. All right, so stay tuned, and we should be right back with you guys.
So, at this point, let me officially introduce our special guest, Dominican-born broadcaster, communicologist, writer, Dr. Steinberg Henry, a distinguished Dominican who is a household name in the world of media. Welcome, and thank you, Stein, for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much for having thought about me. Mills, the trouble has started, right?
Yes.
Donnie, thank you very much for having thought about me. It reminds me of, Mills, the last time we spoke, and I was telling you about leaving no one behind. You were telling me that sounded a lot like Obama.
Yes.
Here's about an Obama joke. He went to either the British House of Lords or British House of Commons, and they were inviting him to deliver an address. And the people who had been before him were Nelson Mandela and Pope John II. In my case, Roosevelt's skirt was before me. So Obama said, you know what, given who has been before me, this must either be a big mistake or a very funny joke. But I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted.
All right. So, Stein, like we spoke, on a few occasions before this program, we are going to, I would like, to have you share, some information on a wide range of topics. And I want to, first of all, ask you to just tell us about Steinberg Henry. Where are you from? And how did you all get started in the media? Because that's, well, everybody knows you as a household name in the media on DBS radio. So just tell us how, about Steinberg Henry, the young boy growing up, and how do you end up in broadcasting?
Yeah, yeah. Steinberg Henry is originally from Zikak, Portsmouth, Dominica. And it was said, my mother told me I was born in a hurricane. I understood that great leaders were born in hurricanes. So I sort of, I'm really going already. But that is the space, Zika, Portsmouth, Dominica. My mother was Daisy Augusta Andrew. She is dead, from the community. And my father was Fred Holbeck Henry from the community of Wesley. Most people would remember Alfred Henry. They were half brothers.
Oh.
My mother was an accountant with East Industries, Portsmouth, Longhouse. My father was a village historian stroke anthropologist. Eugenia Charles told me once he was one of Dominica's best speaking Frenchmen. He had left Dominica to go to Guadeloupe at a very early age, where he completed a baccalaureate in High French, and then philosophy and other things like that, agriculture, and so on and so forth. Grew up at Portsmouth, went to the Methodist Church. I can't leave that because I think faith is going to be part of the discussion tonight, just as mind is and spirit is. And went to the Portsmouth Government School. As all boys, I sat the common entrance and could not pass. I was smart at 10, so they sent me to do the exam. I didn't pass. I start at 11, I didn't pass because the day of the exam I was out playing. It was the day before the exam. And when I did it, 12 years, my mother said, let's see if you're going to pass this time. Because I was bright, I had won another district spelling bee competition. At 10, I was a pretty cool kind of kid. With my kinky hair that could not comb, breaking every comb that I put in it. That kind of thing. Playing so much but I just read a lot. I mean, when I won my spelling bee competition, they gave me, in 1965, 66, they gave me a student companion as my first prize, which at that time was the Google, the encyclopedic. It contained everything, and it was a hardback, orange-colored book with everything from Proverbs to, make hay while the sun shines. We didn't have hay, but, and my mother decided, you know what, at 12 years, you're going to sit that exam. And I didn't. I got a pass. My mother said, you are going to school. So I got my little grip. Like most of us know the grip story by now. And she packed that up, my khaki pants, my white shirt with my little strip on it. But I think when I started grammar school, had the ties and set off for Roseau. I first lived with a group of people called the Millers from St. Vincent. And
Yes.
they were very kind people to me. I think it was quite great being with them. Later on, after 2 years, I moved to the Elwins, and that Ada Elwin and Hyacinth Elwin. I know some of you remember the Chief Youth Development Officer, Director of the Women's Bureau. Ada Elwin was aunt to Duncan Stowe, attorney, Philip Elwin, those boys. So I lived with them. And my wife, the woman who would become my wife, also lived with us. So we became friends from that early time. That brings a bit of intrigue into the story, doesn't it, Mills?
Yes.
But I wouldn't tell you where I saw her first. You might take me to the court. But because she was 11 and I was 13, I didn't do anything, Mills. Don't even think twice about it. But that was from there, grammar school. And I think I started to come out not lower than 7, 5, 3, 2, 1, and my mother was very pleased. But when I got to third form, uh, I think I fractured my leg or something playing right wing for Portsmouth boys who went to school in Roseau against Portsmouth team. And I went into school late in 1970, went into third form. Didn't do very well at my science subjects, chemistry, physics, but I did very well at biology to the extent where I could sit it at fourth form level, O level. But I was a great student of literature and of Spanish and commerce and, of course, languages, geography, and that kind of thing. When I did leave grammar school in 1974, I had 7 O levels, which wasn't so bad at that time. But now I look back on it, I say, don't boast about it. Children are getting 13 and 19 these days. But I had 7 and I went along. My father wanted me to do some banking. My mother thought, oh, great stuff. But, I went to Portsmouth and I got a job as a teacher at the St. John's Primary School, where I started. And after 1 year, I think I was doing excellent methodology, that is preparing the work, preparing the schedule for the next day. I think the education minister at the time saw the quality of my work, and they decided, this guy needs to move on. Between that time, 74, 75, it seized 2 women in the Savanpai area. They were teaching, they were living in the Savanpai area, and they were teachers at the Savanpai government school, 2 female teachers. The Ministry of Education decided they couldn't leave their teachers at Savanpai in that particular environment. So they decided that I was one of the teachers who should go to Savanpai. So I went to Savanpai. No, let me back a little. After I left St. John's in 74, I went to the Portsmouth Secondary School to teach. I taught geography, science, literature. Many students remembered me teaching them literature, biology. I once met a woman working in the Ministry of Health, and she told me it was the first time she understood the female reproductive system. I wondered about myself at that time, and after 1 year at that time, it was Bellamy, it was Anthony Lockhart, it was Arundel Thomas, Judith Garway, it was Athleen Douglas. These were some of the people who were around that I worked with at the time. I was just a mere, 20 years, but I was kind of brilliant. And then by 75, the incident arose with the Dreads, and they asked me whether I could go to Savanpai because they had a class where the children have special needs. I didn't realize how the long arm of things was working from that very early age, but I went into that place. I used to walk to work from Zikak to Savanpai, which was quite a distance. And we got a ride sometime. We would mop a ride or something to come back down. It was Cuthbert Francis, Osborne Wallace, Mayor of Roseau, who was Irving Knight, who would be maybe called Mayor of Portsmouth, sorry, what am I saying? And Osborne Wallace became principal of the Portsmouth Roosevelt Douglas School for a while. And in 77, while at Savanpai working with those children, they more preferred to play outside, dig up roots, look at plants, study tap and fibrous roots. I would take them to the cabarets, let them run. They just, fast forward. One of the guys who was at the school met me about 10 years ago, and he said, I did great, I have 3 houses already. So he was very proud of that. They did well. It was a special school with Peterson Austri was the principal, the father of the Reginald Austri, the minister then, who was Minister for Housing, was it? Yeah. And I stayed at 7 Pine. And somewhere along the way, by 77, Mikey Bruni told my wife, Jan, we were not married yet, that he heard DBS was publishing a job. Now, Mikey would have known us because their house was opposite ours on Greens Lane, the Bruni's residence. So he told my wife that, I should check it out. I had been reading poetry. I had read poetry in the 1974 strike, Spotlight on I. I remembered reading poetry on DBS on Saturdays. I would come up to read. I liked reading. And when Mikey, who had known me, heard that DBS had the position, he asked my wife to ask me to apply. I came into DBS. I met Dennis Joseph. He called me in for an interview. We spoke and he said, you know what? I like your vibes. Why don't you come in and begin to work? I left the teaching position. In fact, the Ministry of Education was making an announcement on the radio to ask me to return to my teaching position. Dennis Joseph, in the process, was able to secure a secondment for me, and I was able to stay at DBS. And in September 77, began broadcast there. I first started to read horoscopes, and when they put me on the newsroom, in the newsroom, I started to do some news. I remember a lady from Rosewood said, when she heard me, she said, boy, you better go back country. Because apparently they don't think I was doing much justice to their English language. But Dennis Joseph encouraged. I think I really took off in media when one of those days he called me into the studio at that time. I'll tell you who I was with. Alvin Knight was there as program director. Ferdinand Frampton was there. Tim Dura, Michael Peter Richards would join. Shemaine Green and Felix Henderson would come in together with me. Those were the three people Dennis Joseph employed. There was a gentleman called Winkle Johnson who was doing news, international and regional news on the news desk. Osborne Thomas was a technician, but he also did Newman with Ferdinand Frampton. There was Edward Murphy, who was deputy technician, and a gentleman from Grenada from the days of WIT, the Windward Islands Broadcasting Station, Mr. Buckmeyer, who was chief technician at the time. So we were quite a bunch. There might have been others who came on. Marilyn Pascal would come in. The sales office had people like Julietta Pascal, this Eleanor Joseph. I will remember a few as we go along the way. But
And
wonderful,
when would
wonderful.
Rudy Joseph, when would Rudy Joseph
Rudy
join you?
Joseph would flow later,
Okay.
long after Felix, coming in the days of Myrtle Solomon. He would come in a bit late, early in the 80s. He would come in along the time when Lennox Linton came in and Ernst Andre was there. And then we had people like Velma Paul and these people within the creole department. And these were, yeah, Rudy would come in at that time.
And what
And
about Ted Daly? When did he come in?
Ted Daly, very good, very good. Thanks for reminding me. He was long before I came. Remember, he was in the days of Barnett Defoe, Francis Andre, and Jeff Charles, and Rose Keynes, and Joan Prevost, and Alvin Knight. Ted had been in at that time, along with Raymond Lawrence.
Rosie
That
Mills.
was Rosie Mills, who was also there was also there at that time. But when I came in, Rosie Mills had left long, and Joan had left. And when I came in, Alvin was there. Alvin was program director. Frampton was news editor. I remember Dennis coming to me. That was what really opened me up to the radio. And he was doing the top 40 in those days. We had a top 40. And he came to me and he said, come with me. And I went into the studio with him. And he I remembered the song was Michael Jackson's Let Me Show You the Way to Go. And he said, I'm going to roll the song. And I want you to say what it is now. The name of the song is Michael Jackson. The name of the artist is Michael Jackson. The name of the song is Let Me Show You the Way to Go. And it's at number 30. So he said, ladies and gentlemen, I got a friend here. Tell us what you're doing. I saw him in the station with Mr. Joseph, and we are counting down to 40. He turned off the microphone and he told me in radio, there are no misters. Lesson number 1. Today, when I hear every pastor referring to people as Miss this and Mr. that and Mrs. this, that never existed in broadcasting. Not even the great Larry King ever used it. I remember Julian Rogers came to radio once and he spoke with Curtis Matthew, and Curtis said, I'm here with Mr. Rogers. He said, Julie. I hear people these days write a news item and the first paragraph says, the tourism minister has said that extension of the Soufriere jetty will begin in the next 2 weeks. Mrs. Charles Pemberton. Nobody said that in radio in my days. It was the tourism minister. I call a radio station and I say, good day, this is Steinberg. Who am I speaking with? Miss John. I say, who is Miss John? So there's a culture of Miss and Mrs. And I would prefer if that was replaced with the sociology, that is, who the person is, what the person does, the designation the person holds. That is more substantial to me than whether the person is Miss, Mr., or Mrs. I would prefer honorable. I prefer Her Excellency. I prefer His Excellency. You see, well, this Miss and Mrs. I hear little children of 5 years being called the lady. You know, so those are some other things. But that lesson regarding the Mr. was the thing that first caught my attention. We went into the top 40, and following that, it was, I just started to create, and he allowed for a lot of creation. So the jingles, I still have the 1315 total news intro, but that was done since 1987, I think. Lots of good stuff. I mean, but then he thought that I was an artist, but I enjoyed learning at that time. And here I have to backpack a little. I was reading so much. Frontline Bookstore was on. But before I went into radio, because I think that way sometimes, and later on I returned as a writer to rearrange the materials. Let me rearrange it now. When I left high school, and this is an important story because it is going to figure later in what we're going to talk about my own progress in terms of academia or scholarship, or doing comparisons or contrasts between media and their time frames. When I left grammar school, I went to look for my famous father. Now, that gentleman left my home when I was 4 years, and he went to his village of Wesley. So that is an important story because I like to talk about mother-father relationship as a development and human relations specialist, as a learning specialist. I like to talk about the significant responsibility of mother and father. So let me establish this. When I was 18, I left high school, 18, 19. I went to my mother and said, go look for your father. My father had been out of my life for 14 years. I would see him on occasions when I would go to Wesley to meet my aunt. You see, on holiday, my mother would send me to Wesley to meet my aunt. So I'd go to Wesley, meet the gentleman. And when I first met him, he told me, what do you want? What did you come here for? I told him, I just want to meet you and I want to see. He said, well, Mr. Man, I don't have anything particular here. I don't have a house. He had a broken down shack, which was once the Wesley Post Office. The doors were blown open. He just had to pull them in. The windows were out. There was the flooring in the living room area had fallen in a bit. There was an old chandelier in the roof. The backside of that was a mattress, an iron bed marked 1893, on which there was a queen-size mattress that was torn with fiber. In the other little room, he slept on a foam on the floor. The few shirts and pants that he had were hung on nails. He had 2 plates and 2 cups and 2 forks and 2 spoons, a glass, some salt, a bottle of oil. And he said, "That's what I have. What do you want from me?" But he was a village historian, anthropologist. Later on, I would discover he was a minimalist, and I will tell you other things about his way of life. So he said, "Well, if you're going to stay here, I don't know where you're going to sleep." I said, "I'll sleep on the mattress." So I slept on that mattress that night. The second night when I went to the mattress, stuff began to crawl on me. So I left and I went to, but I told him I couldn't sleep. And before he could wink, I jumped and laid him on the sponge next to him. He couldn't understand. Next morning he got up. He said, "You are really determined to stay around me, aren't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What are we going to eat?" So we went looking for breadfruit. We roasted breadfruit, cod. It was the first time I tasted cod done so well. He did it so well. That was the first time I saw him pour water in a jug. We used brown sugar into it and took the rind of the lime and cut off the skin and drop a piece of cinnamon into it. And he said, "This is great stuff." And I started to think, who is this man and what is he saying to me? He said, "You're going to be a teacher." I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, be careful that you do not interfere with your students." I say, "Okay, careful." Lesson number 1. He said, I have another lesson to teach you. And gentlemen, here starts the journey for me. He looked at me. At that time, my mother is helping me very well. She's supporting my efforts. She had sent me out to sea. I had traveled all up the Caribbean. I had been up in St. Kitts as a huckster, selling products on the beach in St. Kitts and Antigua and Montserrat. Lots of Tanya, lots of dashing, lots of planting. Don't mind the drift. I'll come back to my father in a while. Going into just sailing the seas from Bridgetown, Barbados to Phillipsburg, St. Martin, selling hundreds of coconuts on the shore. Just going the Caribbean Sea and expanding my imagination. Water everywhere, lifting sails, pulling anchors, sleeping on decks in the jibs of ships. So I had that vast experience of just seeing open things. And my father looked at me and said, "I have a question for you." Well, I have 2 questions for you. I said, "What is it?" At 18 years, my father asked me, "What is faith?" Now, I had read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but I didn't know, I had not read the book of Hebrews. Somebody just sent to me a text saying they cannot get the program. It's somebody in Dominica, actually, but it's a Canadian number. So can you hear me? Gentlemen, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we can.
yes, we can hear
All
you.
right, no problem. But I'm just wondering. So,
Okay, Stein, hold on
yeah.
a second. Let me tell the person who's said they can get a program. They can access the program on VTJM Radio. It's on TuneIn. It's on TuneIn, VTJM Radio. And also it's streaming live on YouTube, on Touching Base YouTube page. Okay. So they can get the program right there.
Okay.
And
So
also on YouTube.
also on YouTube. can they also get touching base on the Facebook page?
Yes, it's also on Derek Mann's Facebook page. That's a public page also. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So here is the point. 18-year-old, he looks to me and he says, what is faith? And I say, faith. I had read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but I didn't read the book of Hebrews. I knew so for God to love the world that he gave his only begotten son. But I didn't know the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. So he said, your first lesson being with me is to read the book of Hebrews. Well, I came to know a lot. I came to know about the cloud of witnesses. I came to know about the covenant. After I had read this, of course, between our country dinners, Trey, we used to hunt Cray, lots of fun. I spent with my father. He had a lot of books in French. Le Cours du Troisième, Albert Speer, Le Drame de Paul Claudel, Contrat Social from Jacques Rousseau. So I was reading Jacques Rousseau long. And I was reading that at 18 and 19 years, and I was reading the complete works of Shakespeare. I had to, because he was saying to me, yon Cassius has a mean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Complete it, and I have to say, such men as these are dangerous. But I had to know those things to be in his company because he had a certain discipline. But he was a guy with a kinky kind of hair like Rasta. White shirt, black slacks, push in. That was all. And there are lots of other things that I will say about his influence on me. After we were through with the faith exercise, and it would return in the chapter 1 of my PhD dissertation in 2022. Now imagine that. I was only just about 1980, just about 25 years. When I sort of was through with the subject of faith, he looked at me and he said, here's another question. That's the second one. He asked me, what is mind? Now that's a father intervening in the life of his teenager. For me as a human development and learning specialist, that becomes significant in my later years. What is mind? Now, you're asking me what is mind? I said, I don't know. What is mind? He said, for starters, mind is a composition of thoughts. Gentlemen, 1975, 76, 77, when I entered radio, I went to Wesley, chatting with him, lying with him. And he said, you work in radio? I said, yes. He said, you sound good. I said, thank you. He said, let's go take a walk with me. So we went through the community of Wesley. And he was, hey, this is my son. I said, hello, how are you? This is my son. Hello, how are you? Hey, this is my son. I say, hello. By the time I did 7, 8 people, I was becoming tired of the presentation. So he looked at me and he noticed. When we got back to base, he said, I noticed you were a bit uncomfortable about meeting people. I said, I just got tired. He said, you work in radio? I say, yes. He said, whom do you serve? I said, people. He said, why is it you do not want to meet them? That changed my ideas about production, about methodology, about how the human being is perceived and constituted. So back up. Faith came in And if it is such a powerful thing, I learned to deal with uncertainty and the unknown. Mind came in. Those were my thoughts. But I thought in language. Not only that, when I constituted my PhD, I came upon the gentleman called Kreft and another one called Roberto Assagioli, who was writing on a theme called psychosynthesis. And what did he say? He said, mind has a twin. And when mind is twin with will, W-I-L-L, it catalyzes or pushes forward soul. Gentlemen, I was blown. Not only that, when I went back to read the Hebrews, I saw in chapter 10, covenant. Now remember, mind for me is a composition of thoughts. And in covenant it is said, it is written, I will write my laws upon your heart and will inscribe them upon your mind. Imagine the laws of the Creator inscribed in my composition of thoughts. I just blown into thinking. I think by the time I was through with my father, he was like, oh my God, he was such a pleasure. And my mother was delighted to know that we had a link from. Mm-hmm.
Not to derail you. I hope I'm not doing that.
No, I'm happy.
I think you're bringing up a very, very important part. I think that's going to that's going to add to what our discussion is all about tonight. And I'm trying to grasp onto that serve that your father basically got you aware of, that you're in radio, you're in your early stages, but here it is that, maybe untrained, but you're missing an opportunity to serve. And how you tie that back to going back to reading Hebrews, increasing your faith, and then talking about the philosophy guys. So you're leaving your father now. Do you have a heightened sense now of servitude that you're going out back to Radioland or wherever you're going back with a desire to now serve and to serve with your faith, the understanding that you just gleaned from your father?
I'll give you a simple example. I did the Bagatelle disaster documentary for TBS in, I think it was 1980 something. And one of the ladies who told the story, I met her down by a river. I say this because what I came to learn was it was not so much about me, me, myself, I, and of course the guy went on to say his shadow. But it was not so much about me. It was about who am I doing this for? And some people find that difficult to grasp. But when that overtakes your being, you see beauty in people. When I got the definition of communication as the transference of meaning between intelligences, everybody mattered to me. I don't know what it is to be unkind. Let me repeat this. I don't know what it is to be unkind. So when they told me this lady was down by the river, I went to her. I put my little recorder down by the water on a stone, and she has this board, and she's rubbing her clothes, and she's telling me, yes, I lose my six sisters or so sisters in the landslide, and it was something else. I was in my house, And I just hear, boom! And when I looked up, all I saw was waves of soil. That became the title of the documentary. A simple lady by a river could name a major documentary production, giving meaning to everyday people's lives. And when I studied 8 blind people for my PhD dissertation, they became the ones who gave me the knowledge that I would call a big word epistemology. Were the ones whose beings I explored, and I used a big word for it called ontology. It was their values and what they stood for that mattered. I call it theology. And the methodology, that is how I did what I did, was determined by those who I was determined to present. So that business of serving and providing for others and making sure that others reach the threshold of their own understanding, that others, I could draw out of them the best of them. When I meet a group of guys talking in the street, I say, what are you doing, guys? What are you talking about? Oh my God, Stan's going to tell us something. I cannot do anything else.
So, Stein, I mean, you have given quite a bit of information, thus far, and I know you have so much more, and I am soaking in everything you're saying. It's very deep, and it's very insightful, and it's a lesson, that we can learn from your experience. All right, but I want to venture further into the broadcasting media realm. Okay. As a young boy, I told you before, I grew up listening to you and others, Ted Daly, Rudy Joseph on the radio station. And maybe at a younger stage, I probably didn't really understand, like I understand today. But I as I grow older and time evolves, I sort of am able to make a comparison to back then and now. And I believe there seemed to be a problem, like you pointed out something earlier, like the Mr. thing, that things we could learn in the media. But I think there is so much less emphasis placed on the credibility of the media, the credibility of the information that people are putting out. I think people are so much more reckless with what they put out now than before. And I want to ask you your views on this.
Yeah. Only this morning I was looking up the meaning of the word reckless, and I discovered that it could be spelled with either a W or just the R.
Mhm.
And I didn't know that. There must be a British way and an American way, Yes, a lot has changed. Um, I think a number of people do not have the necessary. There's a body of knowledge that media practice requires, and unfortunately, some people did not get it. But of course, somebody may say, Stein, there were nurses who cared very much before. And a number of times, some of them just barely had a little bit of training. What makes a person naturally loving and naturally caring, or naturally able to carry out their work with a certain sense of discipline? The people who work in media would need to know that their discipline was founded upon a number of other disciplines, or put it this way, their profession. And some of the earlier formations of media practice came out of sociology, because you had to know the society, its structure, its formation, where it was, the nature of it, extended families, the people. You had to know where they lived, their names, their orientation. You had to study the statistics of your nation state. You had to know its population, its exports, its imports, its everything. You had to go to the statistical department, like I would do with Mr. Murphy, to pick up the statistical digest. You had to study your society. So the sociology of your society, that was an important thing. The area of cultural studies has informed many media practices, particularly television framing, framing of film, determinants of subject matter, what constitutes propaganda, the rise of ideological systems, the business about hegemony, where people use media for purposes of control, transnational corporations and advertising. Those are huge subjects. Then you have ethics. Oh my God. Would you do to others as you would have them do to you? Why do you defame a person? Why do you slander a person? Why do you say things about people which you did not verify or validate? Those were seminal questions in the days when Desmond Hoyt was out at Barbados Advocate, not Advocate, the other newspaper. I don't remember the name in a while. When Ricky Singh was around, those old broadcasts when Elvis Carter was in Dominica, those older journalists who really made things happen and report well. Eugenia Charles would say, she'll call a press conference and she'd say, I'm not happy. Where's that Carter boy? What did she like about Carter? He asked us straight what he was thinking, but he based it upon a body of facts. Eugenia Charles would say, she'll call a press conference.
Sorry. Go ahead,
So,
Stan.
in a sense, it's that kind of, a journalist had to be informed. I will tell you something though, Antonia, I think I shared that with you. And we'll talk about the difference that I find in a while. When I was about 29, I think I was working as press secretary to the government of Dominica. I worked as press secretary to Eugenia Charles from 84 to 86. It was a great opportunity to learn. And I remembered meeting Sir Clarence Senior, and he called me to the side and he said, I noticed you're very enthusiastic about media. I said, yes. He said, could I give you a little bit of advice? I said, yes, Sir Clarence. He said, if you are going to be an excellent media practitioner, you must not appear to be openly involved in politics. You should not be seen at a rally wearing a T-shirt. You should not be seen at a rally waving hands or waving a flag, appearing to belong to the party in office. When the day comes, you vote, or appearing to belong to the party that is in opposition. When the day comes, you vote. But no one has to know this about you, because you are what I understood one journalist struggled to talk about the fourth estate. So there was the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. And there was that element called the fourth estate, which has a certain quality of independence. These things dated out of 18th century, England, so on and so forth. But that was it. That was what we always felt and knew to be the case. There were some people who were braver, who actually went into the politics and demonstrated their open support. A lot has changed. Today we have radio stations that openly support a party, and they broadcast its programming, and they bring forth its ideas, and they do it to the best of their ability. And in the process, you have to understand that what came in the midst of this vast transformation of the media landscape in the Caribbean, not only do we know how we left with government-owned radio stations, we now have a number of privately owned radio stations. We have now a number of internet radio stations. We have a lot of activity in social media. We have the intensification and increase of telephony. So Dominica has 40,000 households. Each household has between 4 and 7 smartphones. That's between 160,000 and 280,000 phones. You understand? So we have a different environment where somebody sees the opportunity to say what they want to say. It doesn't have to be true anymore. It just has to make you laugh. It has to entertain. It has to thrill. But remember, there are different levels of that. So there are people who just want to make you laugh, the TikTok thing, I dance. There are people who want to show they're jumping off a cliff. There are people who want to do different things. But there are also people, and people believe, but there are also people who say, if I said Stein was white, maybe somebody would believe Stein was white. And you know what? I can take a picture of Stein. I can create an image of him, use a bit of AI to do it, Photoshop the damn thing, and tell the world that is Stein. I can also put my voice in his body. Now, that is wrong. You see, but we are living in a space, in an eco space, in a world environment where it sells.
And Stanley, let me just jump in there, because that's something while you're talking, I'm thinking, and you just hit the nail on the head. It sells, because earlier in your presentation, you talked about getting a gift of a student companion, for winning the spelling competition, right? And that back then was the encyclopedia. Okay. Today, I mean, we have, said smartphones. Everyone has 7 smartphones, iPads, computers, smart TVs, right? We can get information at our fingertips. Okay. I remember as a young boy, you had to be privileged to have an encyclopedia set at your home. Okay. And that was an improvement from student companion. It was more information. Today we have things at our fingertips. However, it seems to me that it is so much easier to get people to digest, to swallow almost anything, when it can be so easily, researched and proven right or wrong. Okay. And tabloids have become very popular. Salacious stuff have become very popular. And it did have these things back in the day. But today, like you said, it has become commercialized. All right. So the exciting, personal business on the street, the how you call them, reality TV, people fighting and quarreling and insulting each other has become something that people have become attractive to. And I think that is where a lot of the media has exploited this, I call it a weakness. And that's why we have so many of this, real, insane media people just, spotting anything these days, So I don't know if you agree with me or not.
Yeah, just imagine that is combined with sex. And in many instances, sex is a subject we talk about if it's physical, but sex is also a very powerful instrument that is used in commerce by advertisers. And from the very early days when I worked at DBS, Dennis Joseph used to tell me that, it is well known in the advertising world that sex sells. You want to sell a cigarette, the cigarette is long, you give it to a tall woman, you put her against a car, you let her legs be exposed. Fast forward, the Surgeon General of the United States in a 2022 Surgeon General report was concerned with the impact. And whenever the Surgeon General makes a report to the governments and people of the United States, it is significant to communication studies among us. It's also significant to the American world, and they need to look at it. And two things. One, he said that through extensive and intensive research, having all sources available, they had come to be concerned about advertisers and producers of online social media manipulating algorithms that I didn't say it, the Surgeon General is complaining about significant tweaking of algorithms. So a child who is watching or looking at a mathematical problem can find that their hand just touches something and it switches into a sexual object, or it switches into something that looks a bit sensual, and it attracts them to it. And they were concerned about those sorts of things. So it is huge. The foods that children are eating, the vast quantity of hormones that they contain, the necessary pollution of water. Some people think it's necessary. The pollution in the food. In a sense, I say these things to let you know that there are so many complex factors that are coming together in tandem with this social media proliferation and technology. However, I think, especially when I think of Dominica, which I came to know as the child of a village historian anthropologist, it is such a beautiful country. It is such a wholesome place. It is a place that can teach you so much. If only we took the time to determine what we were going to use what it was telling us for. So, for instance, we still need libraries. We still need the culture. We still need an Arabacas of culture. We still need cultural centers all over the island, at least in the parishes or in the health districts. We need them. But here it is. There are still a large number of those that our children can read. When they go to the phone, because they all have phones now, it's part of their working instrument. And let us adults get that straight. It's their working instrument. My God, they're not going to give it up. But how do we direct them to use it to draw out positive information? And how do we also direct them in significant ways? And we'll talk about parents in a while, to get them to appreciate that they can create. I heard your Clarence Christian talking about persons who work online making $800 US dollars a week. How do we take the Dominican landscape? Because there are many stories coming out of it. Does that inform our sensibility? How does that inform our ethic? And the adult learner who is significant for me is
so important now in the Dominican world. And Donnie, I remember telling you, we need to speak a lot about social connections. The infrastructure is there. The technology, we're not going to fight. We can try. We can legislate against it. But it has always moved exponentially. We simply have to find ways to provide the necessary legislation and to provide the guidance. But what is the role of the parent? When Rosie Douglas came to office, if you don't mind the drift, there was a meeting at the Fortune Hotel, very significant meeting. And he had a group of American people from the Black Caucus visiting. And one gentleman said, given what Dominica has and the sensibility of the people, if every household had a laptop or a computer, and people began to learn using this in addition to what we had as our natural ecosystem and ecologic, I call it. There's an ecology. How are things interconnected? How does the river flow into the sea? How does the fruit ripen according to the moon? What is agriculture? In a sense, we have an abundance of information for constituting our own social media. So I'm not running away from it. I just think there's a lot of guidance. Now, the question becomes, there was a big, when you were in the 70s, the critique that Ricky Singh and others, Desmond Hoyt is the name of the gentleman that I remember, the critique that these guys used to launch and was against transnational corporations. Now, transnational corporations were huge. They were going across people's countries, building dams, building all types of things, smashing up people's waterways, digging up their soils, taking their diamond, out of Congo, taking this out of South Africa, taking this out of Egypt. It was a big thing, South America, Chile, and El Salvador, all of Latin America, Honduras, Panama, Nicaragua. You remember the days of Reagan in the 1980s. You had all those sorts of things happening. Those were the days of the transnational. And it was significant that sort of media critiqued transnational corporations. So media stood on the side of justice. That was mainstream media. We stood for the people in the society who might have been duped by their governments because their governments were in league with the transnational corporations. So you have transnational corporations building fancy buildings right there next to them, squatting. Media stood in that space to defend their people and stand for justice. Today, mainstream media still has a responsibility. And I call mainstream media established radio and television networks. Of course, those are the places where we tend to find the trade people. But these days, where are the people who have been qualified and who are trained in institutions of learning, who are not simply concerned about making their money, but have a willingness to serve, have a willingness to bring to the attention of our people things that may be happening to them, things that may be wrong in their societies. There are lots of things we can copy. There are lots of things we can copy. There are lots of things we can learn. But we ourselves as a people, there was one self-reliance was big. We have to help ourselves. We have to begin to determine what is right, what is wrong. Parents, within your household, you may not be able to do the math, nor the calculus, nor the geometry, the geography, nor the friends, nor the computer science. But you can pass at the child and say, "You're hungry? You want something to eat?"
Fine. I mean, I could stay listen to you for the rest of the night because you just keep on just pouring out some very interesting information. But what had happened, because most times I hear people like you speak about the media, and especially talking about the 70s, you find that there was a discipline in the media. Even the way that you present your announce, not like now, they make sure that you announce properly. That was one thing. Now, on the question of news, they used to always try to make sure that they get it right. Now, nowadays, we have so many people involved in the media that you find that the news people, they do not take the time to really verify the information and they rush to give out the information first. But back then also the media was also was known to be, the aim was to be independent. What do you believe that is really affecting the independence of the media? Oh,
Well, it takes us back to the good old hiring and training. Shubin Green, my good friend, used to say, these days is wash your foot and come. You just show up, you belong to the political party in office. They give you a job. The manager likes to see you. You get a job. I'm not saying these are the only criteria. These are some of them. You don't necessarily have to be trained. Somebody knows your mother or father, you get a job. Um, it is the only place I cannot walk into a hospital and walk into an intensive care unit, put on a pair of gloves and begin to do something. I cannot walk into a casualty and begin to suture. I cannot walk into a court and just begin to adjudicate a matter. You know, when did it get to the stage where media became the place where everybody could find themselves in it without any significant training? Whoever does that, the deconstruction of a profession. And it is the place that is most disrespected in many instances, not in the United States of America, although in a larger sense. You have to understand in the United States of America is who owns what, who owns them, who owns MSNBC, who owns ABC, who owns CBS, who owns, what is it? What has happened that the discipline has disappeared? And just now it seems like we have some interruption. Hello, the voices. Hello. Janu, the voices are coming through my system. So it seems that the discipline that media people need has somehow disappeared. But isn't that, think about it carefully. Is it restricted to the media? Is there discipline in the nursing profession? Is there discipline in the teaching profession? Is there discipline in the police profession? Is there discipline in the farming industry? Is there discipline among fishermen? Is there discipline among people in the field of forestry and environment? Is there discipline in business? Is there discipline among clerks who work in supermarkets? Is there discipline in the banking system? Just think about it. What is it that has eroded right across professions? Yes.
Okay, go ahead. So great point, and I just wanted to stick on that point with what Donnie started and with what Mills continuing with.
Yeah.
So with transition in terms of the transition, I think is technology. because we're looking at TikTok, a 3-second blurb that pops up on everybody's phone, to the point that Congress, the United States Congress, has actually put an ultimatum of TikTok owners, Big Dance, to diversify, to sell to sell TikTok because of America's need to control information. So it's still about transporting information and disseminating information, but it has to do with the control of that medium. And to that end, Congress is like, we're in an election cycle. This thing might get out of hand. So let's start reining this. So we, both the Republican and the Democratic Party, whatever they may be, that's going to use that medium to disseminate information. We need to control the narrative from there. To your point is, do the media practitioners, people like you who are learned practitioners, do you stick with what you've learned along these years in order to disseminate transparency information, credibility information, professionalism, resourcefulness in terms of getting that information of the, so that when it comes out through a TikTok, that, hey, Steinberg, that's behind that, I know that's credible. I know that's trustworthy. I know that's professional content that's coming out from there. How do you adjust your profession to adapt to inventions like TikTok?
You have to keep in mind that though I share in the field of communication as a communicologist and a documentarist, I am informed by a discipline in human development and learning and education. And what it opens up for me is an understanding of the difference between communications and communication. Jeff Charles, the Dominican broadcaster and the first manager of the Dominican Broadcasting Corporation, he was at Stanford as a PhD student. And he wrote a dissertation where he explored the difference between communication and communications. And communications for him was the technology and all of the satellite, geostationary orbit, right down to the smartphone. That is the dominant system. That seems to be ruling the world. And that seems to be I actually saw heard some guys who couldn't continue their program. They're on radio, but they couldn't continue their program if they were not on Facebook, because their Facebook had gone off. We have to be watching those sorts of things. What is this that has shaped their perception so much? There is effect that is taking place, and some people cannot explain it. One of those days I was doing a show like this, and because of my visual limitation, I did not immediately notice where I was. So I'm going to do it for you. So in turning my chair, I rolled off the chair. And they were saying, Stan, we can't see you. But they could hear me, which is what radio is. Which is what
exactly.
This is what radio is. You see, I didn't have to see. You get the drift. But Stan, I said, but you can hear me. They said, no, if we don't see you, something, just as it's like COVID has come onto us. It has intervened into our social spaces, and it has eroded nearly every single discipline. If it met us, it's almost like something has come into our lives. And if it met us with pre-existing conditions, that was it. We were going to succumb to it. And what it did, it met a number of media people who were untrained. But they still had, because media requires formal training.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of the professions. It's like law. You require some form of formal education. You have to, it's just one of the things. So the discipline, some people come into media, they get a job, they are, I can think of countless people who joined media who really got jobs. They were nicely spoken and so on, but they were not particularly interested behind a person could be in media and be a pedophile, you know. But because they are not trained in the field, they use the profession to stalk children. A person could be in yes, a person could be in media and be a neurotic. You understand? And because that is the case and it has not been diagnosed, that becomes what is imparted. Listen to radio shows and not feel the music. Because there's something about the DJ that comes to me that is not, it's not clean. And so it is a difficult thing to actually lay your hands on it. However, when there is a constituted body, now there are people who are very attracted to the false. Wow. Hear what I said. There are people who are attracted to the false because it is juicy. It gains speedy popularity. It takes us back to the same point, right, Mr. Thomas Morrison, that we were talking about earlier on?
Yeah.
You see, so it is a selfish desire to gain. But when it becomes higher level material, where it enters the realm of political power seeking, and then distortion begins, where news begins to be formulated to distort a race or a group or Haitians or Asians or Black people, or you just name whatever group or political party you may think of, then that is a serious, serious matter because it moves thousands, even millions of people to act. I mean, I listened to Trump tonight. And Trump is telling the American people exactly what he's going to do, but nobody wants to believe him because he's come to the point where he has mixed truth with lies so much that he's allowed to speak it. And in the process, he gets bites to speak for 15 seconds and he speaks the lie. But because he has a certain thing about him where he makes them laugh, and he has what preceded him as a sex history, people find him intriguing. So he's free to say anything and everybody laughs at him, but he's very serious. You see, and in the process can do very dangerous things. Now, people can know the things that are good. I mean, you go next to a child and you bring something that's hot and the child will pull away. You go next to an adult, you put a little flip. People don't like things that cause them pain. But people know things that are not good.
Right.
But have we also reached the stage, Morrison, where people cannot distinguish between what is right and what is wrong?
That is a good question. Yeah.
No, Stein, very, very interesting, very interesting. And I want to revert to the Dominican context, Dominican situation with exactly what you're talking about. You were in the media way back. You covered some you were in the media at the time when we had some very upheaval, the strikes,
79.
79, yes, the overthrow and all of that, right? And you were tasked to report the news, okay? You also independence, and you covered a lot of great events in Dominica, good events and bad events.
Yes, 78, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Right. Now, today, we have media practitioners or people in the media, however you call them, who seem to have dedicated the time to tarnish Dominica's image. Okay, and this is done. Everybody knows, with a political impetus, a political objective. So I see, so many great articles being wrote about Dominica from mainstream media, internationally, promoting our hotel, our destination, our infrastructure, our whaling attraction. And we have certain media houses in Dominica who never promote this, but will attempt to promote all sorts of negative. Most of them are made up, and I find it very troubling that we have Dominicans who have a platform, who see, who don't have the nationalistic fervor to not try to ruin their country, despite of political leanings or whatever. So
Mike Douglas was a very interesting man. He would be opposed to some of the things Eugenia said. He would wear a black band and still go to an independence anniversary celebration. He was a statesman. There is a place, going back to my father's early wisdom, he drew a quote from, I later found out that it was from Thomas Jefferson. He said, "Where error of opinion is tolerated, reason is there to combat it." We would wish that I had an opinion and you had one, and we could do as my old uncle Alfred Henry said, let us agree to disagree. We wished that that was something we could practice and allow reason to prevail. We wished we could have dialogue, and after the dialogue is completed, we have somebody who created what we call a synthesis, like the electoral reform discussions. Somebody could gather that data together and say, these are the main points coming out of the matter. But apparently, it seemed like antagonism, seems to be more the order of the day than a clear discourse. I believe another element has come into play in world events. And it is probably better understood by the pastors and the ministers and the priests and the people of the gospel. It is something we don't like to talk about. When we were growing up, we knew something about old women in the community we called Sukuya, and we knew some old people we say were Chiab. But globally, what has emerged is the idea of evil. I don't think the world has taken the time to consider the emergence of evil as a significant phenomenon in human affairs. And it percolates into media practice. It percolates into political practice. People know truth, but they twist it in order to achieve a political end. I think the emergence of evil, just as how you would meet a Christian pastor who would tell you we need to reconsider the concept of sin, we need to look at where evil has emerged
I think when I read at my father's house, A Coup du Troisième Reich by Albert Speer, The Heart of the Third Reich, where he explored Hitler's reign and his treatment of the Jews, you would say that is evil. I think when you look at how Israel has decimated Gaza, what do we call this? And to what extent has that entered everyday human life? Somehow I feel that is a matter we need to give serious consideration. Here is another point, and I have not said that in public before. I met an old Dominican politician, a gentleman, and I'm not trying to make an excuse for the media. I'm just trying to show you that there are other dimensions that have emerged that are impacting a lot of what can possibly be happening. And some people came to believe. For instance, this old gentleman, he met me, he's an old politician. He may be dead now. He met me a few years ago. And he said, Stein, do you realize that Dominica is under the sway of an indescribable evil? Now, I thought it was he alone until a cultural officer told me the same thing. And a big one at that. And I remember mentioning it to Gordon Henderson. And Gordon Henderson said, Stein, this is not something that we can leave like that. No, Holstein, what are you talking about? Is this what we are gathered here for? I mean, we're talking about media, and you're talking about the emergence of evil. When it arises, my mother used to tell me, I mean, if I'm reading Hebrews, my mother used to tell me Satan is no longer a black man with plenty fire in his eyes and a long tail, you know. Satan is now well dressed in his suit and drives an expensive car in the center of the city. We are dealing with some very complex situations in a land that is evolving. Here's my redemption and salvaging take for my beautiful Dominica. I believe that Dominica has a special role to play in Caribbean society. I don't believe that I should pay much attention to those who seek to perpetuate the notion that it is haunted by an evil, that every time it seems to rise, it seems to go back. Up to today, I was saying to my wife, do you realize that Dominica, every couple of years, Dominica always has crusades? And we laughed about it. It's the other side of that country. It is a place that has to break away from a particular kind of spirit. You see, we don't believe it until we realize, Eugenia Chassis to tell me it's a very difficult place to develop. I think she was talking about its topography and the fact that every time you build something, something comes along to destroy. How do we deal with that? We have some challenges that I think are more significant than these people who are trying to spread false news. I think we have larger challenges. I think we are being, how should I say it? I think we are being distracted.
Yep.
I think we're being distracted because this is not political if I say this. In 1987, Dominica was doing $104 million worth of agriculture. Now the government of Dominica is talking about 700 million by, was it 2025 or 27 or 2030? In the 1980s, Dominica received an award from PAHO for its DPT, diphtheria, pertussis tetanus, 90% coverage for its children. Today, Dominica has come full swing, developing health centers in all of its health districts.
Yes, sir.
You have a country with more than 20 centenarians, and the country has developed a system to care for its older ones.
Mm-hmm.
You have a country that has a long history of public health disaster. The country has dealt with hospital trade. You have education systems where it was only a few people who got in. Now every household has to have a graduate.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be in politics to appreciate that.
True.
You don't have to support a party as the child of Fred Henry and Daisy Andrew, village historian and accountant, born and grew up from a minimalist existence to become abundant, to appreciate that.
True.
Sure.
You have an
Excellent.
agricultural system that is burgeoning with innovation. You have a housing system that is, where do you hear this?
You're building an international airport.
You're building you don't have to be in politics for you don't have to support party for you to see this is great.
Thank you.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And for somebody, I have listened to so many people. No matter what the calculations, these things are wonderful things for an island that they once said was under the sway of a curse. It is now unfolding. You have a geothermal, you have a tram, you have a white gold trails. You have a system, you have it by sea, you have it by land, thanks to Bernard Wiltshire. There is so much. You have a fishing system, you have blue or green economy. You know, there's so much that when the Calypsonian sounds, it's an opportunity. You have a whole digital economy. You have a tourism system. I mean, think about it. I was saying the other day that probably we must do some mindful walking, call tourists and tell them, you can do mindful walking. And they say, that's just a fun side, mindful walking. Well, I heard the story from Deepak Chopra. He said when he was learning to be a monk and he was learning to study the significance of Buddhism, he went to a monastery like in either Thailand, one of those. And the chief monk said, okay, guys, today, what is your training? Your hair is going to be cut and you are each going to be given a cup. Remove your shoes. And we want you to go to the streets from 5:30 in the morning and beg. Now imagine Deepak Chopra is considered the greatest spiritual leader in the United States of America because of his meditation tradition. But he's training and he's told, go to the street and beg. So he takes his shoes off, has his little cup, and he's going around 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30, sun is up. The sun is up and it's hitting the pitch, the bitumen, and he doesn't have shoes. So the pitch begins to burn his feet. He suffers on his way back to the monastery. And he was reporting that to his master. He said, what do I do? He said, do not focus on the foot that is on the ground. Focus on the one that is lifted off the ground.
Mm.
We should be giving more wisdom to this beautiful country in the 21st century. We should be. I wrote my first book as she returns now. My mother struggled with glaucoma and the relationship that she and I shared, to the extent that ophthalmology suggests a genetic relation between us.
I traced that, but I traced it by way of how our community developed and how we grew, how our hygienic practices, our public health practices, and all of that. Then I wrote Calypso Drift, 2014. Calypso Drift, such a wonderful, people are reaching out to get Calypso Drift, who wants to get into the film, who wants to, because it's such a picturesque island. And I say, if you're going to do Calypso Drift in the film, you have to promise me one thing, is that you put a live presentation of a Calypso Finals and put the rest of the story around it. And it has to be done in Dominica. You see, then there are so many, just think of all the writers we've produced, even those who are opposed to the government in their political orientation. Dominica has done so much. I cannot imagine, the prayer warriors say that they describe Dominica as the Joseph of the Bible. The brother who was thrown into the pit and finally became head. And it is always my wish and my hope. That to me is the communication. That is the human, that is the relationships that we share. That is the social connectivity and connection that I believe we have to bind. When you have movements, when you have political parties, when you have denominations, when you have clubs, when you have societies, we must pull together and teach each other things and culture and help each other. Share information that is vital for the development of each other. Good information, wise information, knowledgeable information that will cause people to want to learn. Not things about stuff that damaging, the image of this beautiful country. And I mean, I think it is the nature of things. People will do that. Fred White, who was once Dominica's national hero after 1979 hurricane, he runs an internet outfit like you in Hamilton, Ontario. I know what he told me, Morrison Mills, and during his time, he has put some fellas around the world. All they do is sit down in a basement trying to jam people's internet activity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's all they do.
They do. Mm-hmm.
Daily.
Yeah.
I am convinced that for me and my house, we will praise the Lord. I walk in on. I think we have given a lot of attention to the false, and I would like to suggest that it were better if we moved on with what was wholesome for the development of Dominica. Now,
Stein,
yes.
I don't want us to lose that point because something significant happened today with the delivery of 40 homes. And we know the rhetoric that's out there, that what they say about the government, and I don't need to participate. I don't need to repeat that. But what is significant is to the people that matter, to the outside world, to the donors, to the people that are giving money to this government. Like you had the man from the World Bank at the event today. The government is spending money on housing for people, for human beings. I don't know if you're familiar with Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs. Yes.
Yeah.
And one of his fundamental needs at the bottom of the pyramid is shelter. For a human to survive and to excel, one of the critical components is shelter.
Yeah.
You can say what you want about the government, but he's showing the world, and he's showing Dominicans and to the world by extension that he's investing and delivering into shelter for people. As he said from a line this morning, he's taking you from poverty and he's making you, middle class or whatever you want to call it. But that's beside the point. It's the fact that you are appealing to people's need. How do we educate the people through all the frail, through all the propaganda, through all the nonsense that's being propagated out there? How do you show people the value and how important it is that when you look at the government, when people come in to audit or do whatever they do, the international bodies, they're going to see that he is spending money on a critical component for human survival: shelter, housing. How do we live above the fray? How do we get that message above the fray to educate those who are willing to be educated that this is something that's good for Dominica
I think it has
and
to be.
good for the
I think it has to be deliberate. We cannot leave it to chance, in a sense that just as how a school would plan a curriculum, where you decide these are some of the things that we're going to, and even those who do that must be good-hearted and be wholesome and be truthful about it. But it cannot just be left to chance. And that is where mature, consolidated media activity has to be consulted, brought together to determine, government information services used to be able to do that, but they have to be informed, they have to be trained. That is the key thing. They have to be informed, they have to be trained. And because people are still receptive and open to information, the existing social media can be used to bring across images that are quick enough, that are, sufficiently accessible to inform people at the speed at which they come from other sources and other places. But nobody can be assured that they're going to be dominating the scene because the rest of the world is larger than our attempt at doing something. Although the world of social media is proliferating, I still believe that governments can plan. When they used to have development plans, it used to include a section for the media. Those were the days when there was a government, the government had owned the only radio station on island, or they could determine what. There is a need for a planned media project for Dominica. And it is not it's not like you have International Women's Day, International Cancer Day. It's not a day. It's 7 years. 7 years. I like seven candlesticks, seven spirits, seven book of Revelation, seven. It's a 7 year thing where you just decide, where do we begin? And it is a very strange thing. I remember asking, my father had a strange thing he wrote when he was a fixer for the Haitian anthropologist Michel Rothschild. In one of his chapters on the Globe and the Village, Michel Rothschild, who was head of cultural anthropology at Johns Hopkins University, he cited my father saying, most people do not know that, but there was never a Wesley. What was there before we came? In a sense, the existing government has established its economic imperative. What the government has done now, some people say it should have been done 15 years ago. You see, but the government comes along and the government does it. So what we might call an enabling environment. In my gut, in my reflection, something tells me, but somebody might say, Stan, you can't see. Okay, it's all right. I'll tell you about seeing in a while. But somewhere along there, something tells me, what are some of the other things? What are some of the other things that we need to bring to bear? We have a prayer tradition. It's everything.
Resilience is everything. The world's first climate resilient country. That is a powerful thing. But what constitutes that? Is it just what is happening now in terms of housing and building it? Yes, that is integral. That is, as you say, one of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Actually, he introduced a final one which was never published and added to the triangle. It's called self-transcendence. So beyond self-actualization, he had self-transcendence. At what point do we get to the stage where a human being can say, yes, this is satisfying? Yes, this is, and it doesn't take much. When I was president of the government, there was a Taiwanese chartered affair there called Mr. Cheng. One of those days, Mr. Cheng and I don't forget things, Mr. Cheng and I went to Ken Robinson's place to do some recording. And we met a man outside Ken's house digging with a pickaxe. And now and then he would stop to take a little smoke from his Hillsborough. And Mr. Cheng looked at me and he said, you know, it's strange, Steinberg. You know, that man looks very happy. I said, why do you say that? He said, oh, look at him. Some people do not want a lot in life, you know. They just want what makes them big, you know. And sometimes we do not have to exaggerate the situation. But sometimes I ask, are there people in Dominican Mills? I think that was the question that brought you to the Obama thing. Are there people in Dominica who are living in poverty? I ask that sometimes. Are there people in Dominica who have none, who have nothing to eat? And it always strikes me as impossible. But it may be. You see, and how many are they? And are we looking out for them also? There is a deeper spiritual responsibility that has to be included in our development. Following this, that is our relationship with our God. Look above us. In the dark of the moon, Dominica has some of the most beautiful stars above it. Do we look at those things? We have a full moon that ripens our fruits and expands our tubers, and so do we consider it when it arises, when it comes up over the eastern coast? We have sunrises and sunsets. Do they mean anything to us? We used to have 365 rivers. I think we have about 127, 130 now, and a few streams and tributaries. Is that really the case? Do they mean anything to us? For instance, I often hear the Prime Minister of our country say that we must give thanks. See, we must give thanks. So there are in addition to what I think is a massive, I don't like to call it campaign, because it sounds so much, but a massive media movement to present Dominicans, Dominica, and to present Dominica to the world. There has to be something that as a people, we ourselves must do. And now is the opportunity. Now is the time. 2024, this almost, what is it? The third decade of the 21st century. Let me tell you something. By 2030, we would have had 3 times 10. What are we going to do with the next? When we get to 2050, another 20 years, we're going to have a shift. We're going to need that airport. We're going to need that. We're going to need that agriculture. We're going to need the rivers and water. We're going to need geothermal energy.
Yeah.
Just think about it. And it is the last nation. What is good about it is it still has, 66% of its land is still forested national. Who knows? We may lose 10% of it. Who knows? But what is really happening? What is this beautiful place supposed to be doing in the scheme of things of the rest of the world? My good friend Royal Greenaway has a story. She tells me that when she was at the Caribbean Institute of Mass Communication, the director there, Dr. Agri Brown, God bless his soul, rest in peace, He used to say, oh God, he used to say, the day Dominica gets an international airport, Barbados better begin to shake.
Mhm.
Not that we would like this to happen, but because we have a land that is rich and promises to be so for a long time. My only fear, that's why I supported the prayer warriors. And I love the prayer warriors. And that is another mystical part of the Dominican that we don't talk about. Our pastors get at it, or some of our preachers get at it. But Dominica and the Catholic Church in Dominica has a long knowledge of it. Dominica is a land with a certain spiritual identity.
Stein, I want to we are quickly coming to the end of our program. Time really flies. I made a note of this point. You know, I really had to comment on it. We were speaking earlier about I asked you about the media and um the seeming desire or the campaign by some in the media to portray Dominica as this really bad place, and it's a daily exercise for them.
Yeah.
And you surmise that this is a distraction. Um, I think at first we could have considered it a distraction, but when you have the deluge of propaganda and misinformation keep coming, and when you hear the OAS repeating these things, the prime minister is trying to deny electoral reform. When you hear the OAS repeating this thing before an election, you have to take stock. This is no joke. And when the minister at the time, Francine Barron and Ambassador Henderson, had to go to the U.S. to convene a meeting with the U.S. The OAS, and I heard a U.S. ambassador stating that the government is denying Dominicans electoral reform as per the opposition. You understand that this is no joke, and this is no longer a distraction, because we've seen what has played out in other countries like Bolivia, right? So that is why, in this democratic country of Dominica, where people are free to choose who they want to represent them, when outside forces are being influenced by lies and propaganda, the people who support this government and have appreciate the works that have been done by this government must speak out. Because if you don't speak out, it's going to be the perception that what the loud voices are saying every day becomes the truth. And I think
I must tell you that by nature I'm an educator, and my responsibility is to draw out. That's the original meaning of the word educate. I bring matters to the fore that, for instance, you critique the concept surmised. I think it allowed you to develop a discourse and to speak so freely and wonderfully about the last matter. It's my business. I do not pretend not to understand the political. I think there are persons who do it much better than I do, but I think my responsibility is to speak that can others freely express what is the truth, what is the stance that should be taken, what it is that you're supposed to be doing, what it is that you're supposed to be elucidating. I can facilitate that process very, very simply. And that, I think, is my responsibility, my friend. So I really appreciate the discourse that we've really had.
Mr. Mills, your mic, yeah, unmute your mic, Mr. Mills. You've been silent for a very long time.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, your role, as you say, as an educator, I noticed that for a while you used to always come in, and I know, especially on some station, also especially talk show hosts, they will always look forward to hear your input because you always try to bring something in a different perspective and try to bring some balance to it. And I find you sometimes you find a home, call it a home, where people receive that type of perspective. While I notice now, because of that same issue now, that the same perspective that you try to bring things to balance, in some areas, it is not welcome. How do we get people to appreciate those things that you do, so that you can really have the impact that you really should have?
I wish I could. I mean, I feel quite nice with this discussion. I'll be very honest with you. I wish I could go to the other stations and speak with them as freely as I do with let us say Kyrie, or let us say I call TBS on occasions. I do not like my points of view to be distorted. I have tried on a few occasions to get involved in making statements on, let us say, Q95, but I don't always like the way it goes across, and I don't always like the way it is treated within the social media milieu when it spills up from radio. And because I enjoy my good name, it is almost my responsibility to sometimes I choose to stay away from certain discourses. And I do so very freely. I am a child of a village historian anthropologist. I have enough material to read and things to keep me busy. This is not being selfish. I have other responsibilities and other things to care for. There are other people who need a friend to speak with. There are other people who need some form of therapeutic intervention. There are other people who need counsel. There are children who need learning, students who need support. I'm speaking about what I do. There are documents I have to read. There are lots of other things to do rather than getting myself stuck into a discussion on a party political radio station that is designed to destroy a government that is in office and a country that is growing and trying its best to rise above, its long history. You understand? But when it becomes necessary, I intervene. I try to come in to say, hey, no, this is a country, this is a beautiful place. This is a place that I love. And, I will not stand by and watch people say very nasty and brutal things about Dominica. And it has become serious. It has become planned. It is concerted effort, you see. And in a very strange way, I am interpolated. I am part of the process too, meaning I am also charged because I am part of the group that says you are not going to destroy Dominica. You see, and I say it very freely. I find great delight in the work that has been done over the last 20 years, just as I found great delight in the work that Eugenia Charles had done through the Freedom Party with a number of developments in the summer school and all of those projects and the financial stability of the nation state. I find great memory in what the Labour Party before had done
in Patron, the establishment of a social security, an aid bank, a national bank of Dominica. And I find great delight in Libla's Beach Control Act, securing the beaches of Dominica for the people, and for his work in salvaging our national culture. So what is it? Why should a group of people come along? It is always strange to me that a group of people should come along and determine that what is happening in Dominica today is wrong and it's false. And it doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense to me. So if you are closer to it, you're much closer to it. You see it more often than me. I need to travel home in a while. I was thinking of this year, July, because there are a few things I wanted to get involved in. So you are more likely to speak about it more vociferously than me. Here is the thing. I don't like to talk too much about things that I have not actually seen and felt and been part of. That has been my way of life. I have to be among the people, be with the people, get a sense of what is happening, you see, for me to really treat it. I hear media and I hear some of the things that go on media, and I'm amazed. I hear people calling people criminal and media who say nothing. You see, so it really shocks me. So I think over time, there has to be, yes, you have to establish so what do you think that you are going to do? Is it a police activity? Is it a criminal investigation activity? What are you going to do to deal? This is a matter that you have to discuss otherwise. But surely, when it comes to what I find beautiful about Dominica, I think these have to be enhanced. And I'm prepared at any time to step into the ring to make sure that that particular media project that is designed to lift Dominica out of the image that others seek to dump it in. I'm prepared to help to lift that up, either through consultancy, through personal work, through underground work, through work that is free, whatever I have to do. But this Dominica is going to rise. That's my truth. That's my belief, my friends. That's my belief. That is my truth. You see, so if you know for sure that the others were determined to damage this country, I think anybody who's determined to damage anybody, you have to deal with them accordingly. I think so. As long as people are trying to destroy the great image. Do we fight image with image? I don't know. Do we fight social media with social media? Do we fight media with media? It's quite a bit of work. It's just unfortunate that this is happening at this particular time in the history of Dominica. But maybe this is the contradiction that Dominica has always been. And so these things they work together. But over time, I think over time that force that opposes what is being done, I think it's going to diminish. That's what I think. I speak it. I think it's going to diminish over time. I think so.
Yep.
So let us see what you think. Nani, you told me you would be asking me about vision. You told me you would be asking me about PhD. You told me you would be asking me about learning, and you brought me into a very important space.
But you see, Stein,
did I do justice to your?
My friend,
I'm just telling you what I think.
My friend, let me tell you, you have given us so much information and knowledge. And I was about to say, I meant to ask you so many questions, but you are such a teacher, If I have to ask the questions, we'll still it till tomorrow morning, So we definitely will bring you back, because there's a lot more stuff we want to discuss with you. And you are an exceptional human being, and Dominica is very proud, of you and your works and your history and what you have, your contribution to this country. from a young man up to this very point. And as Mr. Mills says, every time you call the radio, people are glued, people learn,
Mr. Mills must tell us why his name is the enforcer.
Well, well, you see, if I can give you the answer because when you have your phone and you get a name. I saw somebody had a name, Chief Justice, but because I'll tell you why. The real reason why my name is the Enforcer is because every now and then I call the radio station, the other radio station, and they always put me off. But I'm trying to maintain that people have to be truthful. And anytime I hear something is wrong, I try to call and point it out if I doesn't get the opportunity. So I get the opportunity to enforce the truth. So that's why I'm the enforcer. Now, talking about the enforcer, I want to ask you one last question because all the concern that you have about trying to make sure that things are right. In Dominica, we have an issue about electoral reform. And to me, the main thing I'm seeing in electoral reform is that on one side, they want to stop Dominicans who live overseas coming in to Dominica and participate in the enfranchisement of their rights to vote. And I'm taking that to say, look at that. We have this program, touching base. And what it is about, touching base with Dominicans at home and overseas. And if you look at it on the screen, it is only two of us from Dominica on the screen. Ronald is kind of silent, maybe just listening, and I'm one of the participants in the discussion. But we have Donnie, and we have Thomas, and we have Stein. 3-1. One in Dominica, 3 overseas, talking to Dominicans at home and abroad. How do you answer that based on the fact that people are trying? The biggest concern they have to change our way of voting is to ensure that people who reside overseas do not have that opportunity to vote. I just would like your comment on that.
Yeah, briefly, it has to be quick. I always felt that wherever you are, as long as you are Dominican, you have a right to vote in that country. This separation, when I listened to all of the electoral discussions, reform discussions, it always amazed me that people were fighting so vigorously to keep people out if they were away for so many years and this many years and this many years. Because wherever I walk, wherever I go, I am whatever I become, I'm Dominican. And it is that has a way of allowing us. I can well understand that persons would need to acquaint themselves with remain in touch. Remain in touch. I think most of the Dominicans who tell you they vote, whether they're in St. Martin, Tortola, St. John's, Antigua, Texas, Houston, wherever, North Carolina, California, London, Germany, wherever they are, they tell you there's something Dominican they always do. People, those of us who live abroad know we always listen to 150 News. I mean, it's just something that it makes us Dominican. Somebody may say, well, does that give you the right to vote? Because a vote is a precious thing. I say, yeah, in part it does. And I really believe that how do we come to terms with ourselves, do things right, solve matters, how do we solve problems quickly, speedily, that is agreeable to all of us. There might have been once when we wanted to fight, against the colonial government. It is we ourselves now. I don't know. I don't understand those long disagreements and those fights. Is it the discipline? Is it law that is like that? Is it? So Mr. Mills, and I don't know why they call you Mr. Mills there.
I wonder why myself.
I always wondered, but it is this type of, I am so Dominican everywhere I go. I don't
I live, it doesn't matter to me. People like to hear the way we speak, people like the way we work, people like the way we carry ourselves. We're very Dominican, the things we eat. So I think I have a right. I think we have to, I think we need to clean up voters' lists. That is an imperative. I don't think we should. If people are dead, there are systems that should allow us to. There are enough computerized systems that will allow us between the registry and the electoral office to determine who is alive and who's dead, and the village council, as the case may be, and clear up those things and get ourselves ready. And let us not fight each other and delay too much over those matters. There are certain things we should not be fighting over. We should not be fighting over building a bridge. You know, where the money going? Where the money? How can we be fighting over building an international airport? It doesn't make sense. So it overwhelms my heart. It overwhelms my heart to see this. I can understand critique. I can understand argument. I can understand debate, differences of opinion. But at some point in time, the statesman among us and stateswoman among us has to emerge.
Especially if it's not at the expense of Dominicans. It's not going to be a dead burden to Dominicans.
You understand?
Usually, most of the airports they build will, generations have to pay for it. But in this case, it's free and clear.
I just think it's going to be in the next 2-3 years, you land at a place and people are lifting their heads high, and people are proud.
I wish. That's what I wish too.
Yeah, and then I have a friend who called me and says, "Stein, I'm surprised at you." I say, "What?" She says, Scarrett is building a Chinatown. I say, "Well, I saw some. I don't see video, but I have people describe the video to me, and they're not lying." They're telling me what they see, and I say, "But it has to be something." And then listen to all of the things, all of the precursors, all of the discussions, all of the things that are preceding that, and you say to yourself, that is going to be so interesting. I see the integration. I don't know. I see the East Coast the $127 billion road system on the East Coast. I see that flowing all into that whole development. I see a West Coast project. I see tourism emerging. Michel Rolf-Trio, the Haitian anthropologist whom my father worked with, he finally wrote a PhD dissertation, and he presented a book out of it that he called Peasant and Capital. It's about Wesley, Peasant and Capital, Dominica in the World Economy. Try to note, if you can find that book, that is a book anybody should read. And it was beautiful that he called these sections enclaves. So he actually saw a road running right from Salisbury, Colby Street, straight across into the East Coast. So usually what we had were a lot of roads we have roads running from north to south. Yeah. But he actually saw a road running from east to west. And we have that, so there's a lot to be done. My father used to tell me it would be done sometimes along higher river banks. So there's still a lot of experimentation to be done, finding space within the hinterland, because this is a land we have come into the age of ecological respect, and we have to be stewards of the land. We're not just cutting tree and throwing stuff in the river. We have to stop those things. We don't do those things indiscriminately anymore. We have to stop those things. But we have to build with nature. We have come into the age where people are wise enough to know, oh yes, we cannot throw garbage in the streets. We cannot do those things anymore. When I heard of the Roseau Enhancement Project, people making noise, oh Roseau, people gonna thief money. My God, Roseau is such a picturesque city. If only you took the time to look at it. And when you think of I'm from Posse. Posse has a lot of lab space. It's a lovely place too. But when you think of the French area, Roseau as it is, the design, all of Old Street should not have vehicles passing on that. There should be cobbled roads, block that off. All of the French lower quarters, all in that little region there, all of those places should not have vehicles moving inside of them. That should be a place where people walk. We can redesign. We can even change the flow of traffic. What used to go east, what used to go east-west, let it go now west-east. Let certain things happen. We can change the psychology of our people by shifting the flow of traffic. Because we are going to need to go up that route. It's not a case where we get to a certain place and we settle. How do we know that? Because, we know that. These are things that, Donnie, I'm going to make you laugh. These are things that blind people see.
Well, Stein, let me tell you, it has been an absolute pleasure. We thank you so very much. And like you said, there's much more we want to discuss, but time won't allow us tonight.
Yeah.
But if you agree to come on, let me know when, and we will be happy to have you on again.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Morrison and Mills and Clevin Mills and Morrison Thomas Clevin Mills and Donny Fabian. I knew Mr. Fabian pretty well. And yes, it was a pleasure. I always feel like I haven't done enough, but I can feel the emptiness in me, which means that I have shared a lot. And it's only because you were great listeners, why I became such a good speaker. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Stein. Have a wonderful evening. Say hello to your beautiful wife, and of course we will keep in touch and discuss some more off air, because I'm a sponge. Whenever you speak, I listen and I learn. So
Yeah,
Morrison,
I have your number now, so I can just tap.
Yep.
Morrison.
Morrison.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Boy, your questions are pretty incisive.
They are.
I gotta match up. I gotta come ready, because I know who's the talent. So you gotta come prepared.
Yes. But it's nice.
Always refreshing to talk to you.
Yes.
That's the type of dialogue and discussion that we need to disseminate to people, to take it to another level. It's not just about, the everyday stuff. We need to take it to the level that when we have discussions like that, people learn a lot. A lot of thoughts get germinated, and then people can see the vision. I mean, how picturesque it is of you to just speak here, and just towards the end there, you're describing the Dominic of 2030. I might not be there, you might not be there, Mills might not be there, we might not be there. But just listening to you, hearing from you, there's prospects. People are like, wow, I didn't look at it that way, and then start to invest in Dominic and say, man, I need to make my contribution. And that's what we're about, man.
That's what you're about.
That's what it's good.
Interesting thing, the interesting thing, Stein understands communication, and I think the way he speaks, I think the listeners have come to understand certain things that we all have been talking about in a different way, and sometimes you have to use different method to really get the message across. And I think in some way, somehow, as he always does, when he calls the station every time, Stein has a certain time he calls, always after this very thing, and then he comes and he makes a comment. So like I say, I always look forward to your comments on the radio. I'm very happy that you came here on this program with us. Touching Base, I forget to mention Radio VTJM covering Queens in New York.
Covering the globe.
And covering well, in the first instance, and the globe was there with us, and at this, the message is going out there. So I was very happy to be on board this time. Looking forward for the next time when you come back on this program, or any other time you call on any program that I'm on.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
let me say good night. Thank you to all the listeners. We had quite a big viewing on Facebook and YouTube. I want to thank you very, very much. And some of them are very impressed and very happy with the program. One said another great program. Thank you, Dr. Henry. You know, guys saying thanks for the Touching Base program tonight. Please join us next week. So we thank you very much for your loyalty and for your support. And we will see you next week. Let me say thanks to Man's Audiovisual, Derek and David Mann for the great work they're doing with our technical side of the program. And thanks to VTJM Radio and proprietor Kojak Fixed Troy Augustus. Thank you very much. And I wish every one of you a wonderful evening. Mr. Mills and Morrison, thank you so much for always being there, supporting me and our program. So God bless you all, and we will talk tomorrow, and we'll be back next week with another program, Touching Base. Thank you, Stein. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Good.
Thank you. Have a good